The afternoon sun slanted across the threadbare arms of Leo's chair, turning the dust to glitter. Apartment 3B hummed with the small sounds of a life arranged just so. Kettle cooling on its electric coil, fridge ticking through its ancient cycle, a paperback face down on the side table like it might wander off if he didn't keep a hand on it. He liked his days quiet enough to hear himself think, structured enough that surprises felt like intrusions rather than invitations. The engine ruined that, big, throat-rattling, impossible to ignore. He parted the curtain with 2 fingers, squinting against the light. A moving truck blocked half the street, its back doors yawning wide. 2 men in matching gray shirts wrestled a sofa through the building's narrow doorway like it had opinions about where it belonged. Then she climbed down from the cargo bay with a box too large for her frame and a ridiculous red lamp tucked under her arm, shade still wrapped in crinkled plastic that caught the light. Dark curls escaped a messy bun, sleeves shoved to the elbows, that look of someone doing 5 things at once and enjoying the chaos of it. Her foot caught on the truck's metal lip. The box teetered. The lamp wobbled like a siren about to wail. By the time it hit concrete with a hollow thud, Leo was already out the door, keys jangling in his pocket. On the stairs, he found her crouched over the fallen box, laughing at herself in a way that diffused embarrassment before it could take root. Nothing seemed broken except maybe her pride, and even that was recovering quickly. "Hi," she said, breathless and bright. "I'm Maya. 3A. Apparently I collect heavy objects and questionable life choices." "Leo," he said, bending to inspect the damage. 3B. "Apparently I catch things for a living now. Do you charge by the item or the hour?" "First one's free. After that, we negotiate." They carried the box inside together, her backing up the stairs while he steadied the bottom. Her place was his in mirror. Same narrow windows overlooking the street, same scuffed floors that had seen decades of tenants, except it echoed with emptiness and potential. She propped the door open with a sneaker, pointed where things should go with the confidence of someone who'd already mapped it in her mind, and they worked with the practical shorthand of strangers doing something brief and necessary. "Thank you," she said when the last box landed with a satisfying thump. The space between them felt oddly comfortable, like they'd skipped some invisible introductory step. "If you ever need a ladder, a cup of sugar, or questionable decor advice." She lifted the red lamp in illustration, its shade tilted at a jaunty angle. "I'll start a list," he said, backing toward the door. "Do that. I'm very useful in extremely specific situations." That night she knocked again, lamp in hand, cord snaked and sulking behind her like a disappointed pet. "Outlet is a contortionist's dream. Do you have long arms and the patience of a saint?" He did. The outlet was tucked behind a radiator that hadn't been moved since the Eisenhower administration, and it took 10 minutes of awkward reaching and muttered curses before the plug found purchase. Warm light bloomed across her unpacked boxes, softening the angles. The apartment looked less like a floor plan and more like the beginning of a life. "You saved me," she said, grinning in a way that made the effort feel worthwhile. "Best neighbor status unlocked. You've peaked on day 1 inch." "Strong claim," he said, wiping dust from his hands. "I haven't even loaned you sugar yet. Give it time. I bake when I'm stressed, and I'm always stressed. I'll keep my door unlocked." But something in his chest, some quietly folded part he'd forgotten existed, uncreased. After that, the favors came like small weather systems, predictable and strangely welcome. A laundry card machine that preferred its bills pre-creased in a specific direction, a key that stuck until coaxed at exactly the right angle, a router with one loose coax nut that turned everything into a negotiation with the internet gods. Each request was simple, each thank you quick but genuine. He told himself this was what decent neighbors did. Assist, nod, retreat to their separate lives. At work, his desk mate Jeremy raised an eyebrow over the partition. "You've been smiling at spreadsheets for 3 days. That's either deeply suspicious or you've finally lost it." "New tenant," Leo said, not looking up. "Asks smart questions. Knows her way around a cinnamon candle." "Cute neighbor," Jeremy translated with the confidence of someone who'd known Leo for 5 years. Try not to sprain anything lifting her boxes. HR frowns on workplace injuries caused by flirting. I'm not. It's not like that. Sure. And I'm training for a marathon. Leo rolled his eyes, but the comment lodged somewhere uncomfortable. That night, there was a note on his door in neat, slanted script. Last one, promise. Where's the breaker? Fridge is playing dead. He showed her the basement panel with the fading unit numbers written in Sharpie by some long-gone super. She walked barefoot on the cool concrete like it might bruise if she wasn't careful, arms wrapped around herself against the damp chill. When the hall door closed behind them, sealing them back into the building's usual hush, she stood there as if weighing another sentence, and then simply, "You're a lifesaver, Leo. Truly." He ate pasta standing at his counter that night, fork scraping against the pot because washing dishes felt like too much commitment to the evening. He thought about the way she'd said his name. Leo, not Leonard or Buddy or Hey You, like it meant something specific. Days became a rhythm neither of them had choreographed. Sometimes he'd step into the hall just as her door clicked open, as if the building had decided their schedules for them. Sometimes she'd appear with coffee in the morning. I made too much and it seemed wasteful. And they'd talk about books she was reading and broken appliances that had personalities and the odd comedy of adult life where you could be lonely in a building full of people. He noticed how she listened. Full attention, leaning forward slightly, as if he was worth hearing all the way to the end of his rambling thoughts. He did not notice the quiet choreography of it. Not yet. The way she always had one more thing to ask, one more reason to linger. One evening he assembled a bookcase for her, the kind from a flat box with incomprehensible instructions and parts labeled with letters that seemed chosen at random. Sawdust clung sweetly to his sleeves. Vanilla candles burned on her counter, going too hard on the scent, but he didn't say so. As he tightened the last cam bolt and tested the shelves for wobble, his phone buzzed against his thigh. Another message from Maya, even though she was standing 10 feet away, kitchen lights flickering. Think it's possessed. He made a joke he shouldn't have made. Careful, he texted back, grinning at his own wit. You're edging into high-maintenance territory. Fourth crisis this week. He expected a laughing eye roll, maybe a playful shove. The 3 dots appeared on his screen, vanished, returned like she was writing and deleting. Her reply was one word that removed the floor beneath him. Oh. The silence after had its own temperature, cold, sharp, final. She mumbled something about being tired and closed the door before he could apologize. He tried to call. She let it ring, then sent it to voicemail. He texted, Maya, I was kidding. You know that, right? The message showed as read. No reply came. The next morning, the hallway smelled like coffee and absence. No knock at his door. No mug pressed into his hands. His doorframe, lately a gallery of her sticky notes. Need a screwdriver? Can I borrow sugar? Is your oven temperature accurate because mine lies? Was clean, stripped of evidence that she'd been weaving herself into his days. He kept listening for small sounds through the shared wall. A drawer closing. A laugh during a speakerphone conversation. Water running. Instead he heard the building. Elevator cables groaning. Distant pipes knocking. The old bones of a structure that had housed countless small dramas just like his. On Friday, retrieving mail he didn't want from the lobby boxes, he found her by the outgoing packages. Wrists crossed, mouth set in a line like she'd had a long conversation with herself and hadn't enjoyed being on either side of it. Hey, he said, because sometimes the body speaks when the mind goes blank. Hey, she said, but the brightness was gone. Her voice rode close to the ground, careful and distant. Everything all right? She studied a scuff on the tile floor, the kind made by decades of feet dragging suitcases and furniture and lives in and out. Then she looked up, tired and direct. Leo, why don't men ever get hints? The question landed like a puzzle piece he'd been holding upside down. Every small scene rearranged itself in his mind. The 2 large boxes she could have asked the movers to carry, the lamp that appeared at night when she could have waited until morning, the key that probably didn't stick as badly as she'd claimed, the coffee she never actually made too much of, the router issue that vanished after 5 minutes of him standing close enough to smell her shampoo. And his joke, High maintenance. Landing like he'd weighed her needs and found them excessive, burdensome, too much. Heat rose to his ears. He stopped. Excuses were just padded walls around the truth, and she deserved better than his defensive architecture. I think I just got it. Her eyes went glassy. She nodded once, turned, and walked up the stairs without looking back. He didn't knock on her door that night. He sat in his chair with the guilt until it named itself. Cowardice dressed as obliviousness. Then he went to the corner cafe where she'd once bragged about their beans. They source from this co-op in Guatemala, it's unreal, and bought a caramel latte and a black coffee. He left the latte at her door with a note on the back of a receipt. No more hints. Just coffee. Leo. It was gone by evening. No reply. Nonak. Nothing. He waited a day. 2. On the third he knocked, empty-handed except for what he needed to say. She opened on the chain, suspicious and guarded. The part of her that joked at crises and invited strangers to breakfast was elsewhere, protected behind walls he'd helped build. I'm sorry, he said, before he could draft a speech that would sound rehearsed. I liked being helpful more than I liked being honest about why I kept showing up. And I wanted to be funny more than I wanted to be kind. That was lazy and careless. You deserved better. The chain slid back slowly, reluctant. He held up a small terracotta pot, a tidy succulent with stubborn, waxy leaves. I brought this because it survives people who forget to water it. I thought, maybe we start with something I can't fix. And if you're still open to it, if I haven't completely ruined this, I'd like to see you for reasons that don't require a screwdriver. Her mouth did an involuntary thing. Almost a smile, then not quite, settling somewhere between hope and caution. She took the plant carefully, like it might break or like the gesture might. Their fingers touched and both noticed. Neither moved away immediately. Tomorrow, he said, voice steadier than he felt. 9. I'll bring the right coffee this time. No ladders involved. No broken anything. Just us. She weighed him with those dark eyes, reading for sincerity. Then, tomorrow. But I'm timing you. If you're late, the offer expires. I'll be early. They met on the front steps in weak morning sun that promised warmer days ahead. Coffee's correct. Caramel latte for her. Black for him. They talked about nothing and everything. Her dreams of opening a small design studio, his ridiculous love of vintage radios that crackled with voices from decades past. The way the city felt different depending on which direction you walked. There was no scaffolding of errands this time, no excuses. Just two people choosing to occupy the same space. Later that week, dinners appeared like commas in a sentence neither of them wished to end. His balcony took on the smell of oregano and warm marinara when she cooked. She insisted on fresh herbs, said the dried stuff was basically decorative sawdust. Her walls slowly collected their inside jokes and the framed botanical print he'd admitted he loved but couldn't justify buying for himself. She bought it anyway, wrapped it in newspaper comics, left it outside his door. The building felt less like stacked rooms full of strangers and more like a conversation happening across a shared wall, intimate and ongoing. One evening, after the dishwater hissed into silence and the city dimmed to its nighttime palette, she leaned in his doorframe wearing one of his sweaters she'd claimed as rent for all the fixing. I used to want grand gestures, she said quietly. Flowers, speeches, movie moments. Now I think I just want to be seen before I have to explain myself. Does that make sense? I see you, he said, surprised at how true it felt in his mouth, how easy. I should have seen you sooner, but I see you now. He still fixed small things. A loose hinge on her medicine cabinet she hadn't mentioned. The squeak in her kitchen drawer that drove her quietly insane. But he also started showing up without tools. Texting before he knocked, leaving coffee when she had early calls with difficult clients, listening when she talked about the work she was scared to try because failure felt too exposing. And she stopped inventing reasons to be near him. She simply was, present without pretense. A week later, he found a folded note under his door in her confident, slanted hand. Coffee first, flowers later. No rush on either. M. He smiled, wide and unpracticed, the kind that made his face ache. Life did its usual life things with all its mundane complications. They missed buses and blamed each other playfully. They argued about whether cinnamon belonged in chili. She said yes. He said it was an abomination against Texas. They learned each other's worst times of day. She was useless before 8 a.m. He got quiet and strange around 10 p.m. On a warm night that felt like a beginning pretending to be an ordinary evening. She appeared at his door with a picnic basket and said simply, "Shoes, roof, now." They ate sandwiches and drank wine from coffee mugs, laughing at the darkness flickering across 100 windows where other lives played out in miniature. When the quiet came, it was the welcoming kind, the sort that didn't need filling. "When I moved in," she said, legs dangling over the roof's edge, "I told myself this was temporary, a place to reset after everything fell apart with Jordan." He'd heard about Jordan in pieces, the ex who'd made her feel small, who'd called her ideas impractical, who'd left when she'd needed steady ground. "What changed?" he asked. "You noticed me," she said, then softer, looking at him now. "And then you noticed why that mattered. Most people would have just fixed the lamp and left." He reached for her hand. She let him find it, fingers interlacing with the ease of something practiced even though it wasn't yet. Downstairs, their hallway smelled like caramel and vanilla and old wood warmed by new light. Outside 3 She stopped him with a touch to his chest, deliberate. "For the record," she said, closer now, close enough that he could count her freckles. "No more hints. I'm too old for that game." "No more hints," he agreed. "I'm too stupid for them anyway." She kissed him like a question finally answered and a door opening onto something worth the risk. It felt overdue and exactly on time, inevitable and chosen all at once. They didn't rush to call it anything official, didn't perform for social media or explain themselves to curious neighbors. They cooked elaborate meals and ate cereal for dinner. They swapped keys with the understanding that space was still sacred. They learned how to be careful with each other and when not to be, when gentleness mattered and when honesty mattered more. Months later, when a job offer dangled in another city, better pay, better title, everything he'd said he wanted, he told her with worry where courage should have been, voice tight with the fear of losing what they'd built. She listened without interrupting, then said simply, "If you go, I'll help you pack. And if you want me there, I'll label the boxes better this time. Probably color-coded. I've learned things." They went together. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility, sunlight streaming through bigger windows. On the first night, surrounded by boxes and furniture that didn't quite fit yet, she asked where he kept the screwdriver, voice elaborately casual. He handed it to her without a word. She laughed, bright and real. "Just checking if your instincts survived the move. Some things don't change." "Good," she said, kissing his cheek. "I'm counting on that." On their kitchen counter sat the succulent, plumper now than when it had arrived, thriving despite their benign neglect. Next to it stood a mason jar containing 3 paper flowers he'd made from receipts and the corner of a coffee bag. Ridiculous, precise, undeniably his. She'd kept them all, refused to throw them away even when he'd offered, saying they were too perfect to waste. On a Saturday morning that arrived like a promise kept, Leo found another note on the fridge, taped beside the red lamp that had finally found its permanent place, glowing warm against the wall. "Coffee first," it said in her familiar hand. "Flowers now." Next to the note sat a small bouquet of bodega flowers, daisies and carnations, nothing fancy, wrapped in brown paper. Simple, sincere, exactly right. He smiled, filled the kettle, and knocked on the bedroom door where she was still sleeping. Some mornings deserved to start slowly, together, with no need for fixing anything at all.